Hey guys, in this lesson we're taking a look at volumes of cylinders and cones. So to start off with, volume is the amount of space inside of a three-dimensional shape. The units are always going to be cubed, and in general, there's three different formulas for prism or for volume, but there's two that we're going to look at in this lesson. The first one is things that are prisms and generally have the shapes of prisms. Volume is going to be equal to the base times the height, and this is the area of the base. And notice that they use a capital B for this, and that's to tell you that it's area. And then for pyramids, it's going to be 1/3 the area of the base times the height. So for pyramids, volume is going to be equal to 1/3 times the volume of the base times the height. And it's 1/3 because it takes up less space than the whole prism would take up. So it's like they cut 2/3 of it off and they're left with 1/3 of it. So when we're looking at a cylinder, for writing the formula for the area of a cylinder, and in general, on most tests, they will give you these formulas and expect you to be able to identify what the base is. Remember what the formula is for the area of that base. So if we're looking at this, this is a cylinder. Our volume is going to be equal to the base times the height. So in this case, here's one of our bases, and there's the other. And it doesn't matter which one we use as long as we use one. In this case, our base is a circle. So instead of B, we would write the area for a circle is going to be equal to pi r squared. So instead of B, we write for a cylinder, volume is going to be equal to pi r squared times the height. And this value right here is going to be the height. And then from the center to the edge is going to be your radius. You can also do the same thing for a cone. Cone follows the rule for pyramids for formulas. Volume is going to be equal to 1/3 base times height. And in this case, here's our base. And our base is a circle. And the formula for the area of a circle is pi r squared. So volume for a cone is going to be equal to 1/3 times pi r squared times h. So if we try these out on a couple examples, directions say to solve for the volume and use 3.14 for pi and round the answer to the nearest hundredth. So solve for volume. So looking at this is going to be a cylinder. So we're going to use the volume is equal to base times height formula. And in this case, our base is a circle. So our volume is going to be equal to pi r squared times the height, where we've replaced the base with the area of a circle. So volume is going to be equal to 3.14 times the radius squared, and the radius in this case is 17.6 squared, times the height is 19.8. So if we put that in the calculator, we're going to have 3.14 times, and I'm going to put the 17.6 squared in parentheses so that the calculator knows that only the 17.6 is going to be squared, times 19.8. And it wants it to the nearest hundredth, so it only wants 2 decimal spots. So volume is going to be equal to 19258 point, and we've got 398, and we want 2 decimal spots. So the 8 is the one that decides whether or not you round up or down, and it's bigger than 5, so you round up. So the 9 is going to go up to a 10, and the 1 is going to come over here to the 3, so it's going to be 0.40. And then our units on this one is meters, and we're working with volume, so it's meters cubed. Looking at the next one, solve for volume for this cylinder. Volume is going to be equal to base times height. And in this case, our base is still a circle, so volume is going to be equal to pi r squared times height. So volume is going to be equal to 3.14 times radius. Now you've got to keep an eye out because sometimes they'll give you the radius and sometimes they'll give you a diameter. And if you remember, radius is equal to diameter divided by 2. And you see how the dotted line goes all the way across? That tells us that the 32 is a diameter. So we've got to take the 32, divide it by 2, and our radius is going to be equal to 16. So 16 squared times the height is 8. So volume is going to be equal to 3.14 times 16 squared times 8. So our volume is going to be 6,430.72. Our units are millimeters, and we're working with volume, so it's going to be millimeters cubed. Looking at the next example, we've got a cone. So looking at our formula for cone, volume is going to be equal to 1/3 base times height. For anything that has one base, and it's going to be 1/3. So volume is going to be equal to 1/3. Our base in this case is a circle, so 1/3 pi r squared times height. So volume is going to be equal to 1/3 times 3.14 times the radius, in this case is 9, times the height is going to be 10. So volume, and if we plug that in the calculator, I'm going to put the 1/3 in parentheses, 1 divided by 3, times 3.14 times 9 squared times 10. And that'll give us a volume of 847.80. Looking at our units are inches, and we're working with volume, so inches cubed. Looking at the next example, volume is going to be equal to, we're working with the cone, so volume is going to be equal to 1/3 base times height. Volume is going to be equal to 1/3, and in this case our base is a circle, so our base is pi r squared times height. So volume is going to be equal to 1/3. Pi says replace it with 3.14. Now if we look at this, it says right there is that distance is 14, and we want radius. Radius is going to be equal to the diameter divided by 2. So our radius is going to be 14 divided by 2. So our radius is going to be 7. So 1/3 times 3.14 times 7 squared times our height for this one is going to be 15. And if we plug that in the calculator, I'm going to put the 1/3 in parentheses. 1/3 times 3.14 times 7 squared times 15. Volume is going to be equal to 769.30. Units are meters cubed. And I think I forgot to put it on here earlier, but here's, looking at this, this is the base. Here's the radius of the cone, and then the distance from here to the center where the radius connects to, that right there, that's going to be your height. And for the problems that we're doing, this should always be a 90-degree angle. And they could also give you problems where they give you volume and ask you to solve for different parts. The first one that they could do is they could give you volume for a cylinder and ask you to solve for the radius. And with these, this is where the formulas come in very handy. It helps you organize everything and know what gets divided or multiplied by what. So we're looking at a cylinder. So our formula for a cylinder is volume is equal to base times height. So the volume is going to be equal to, in this case, our base is still a circle. So pi r squared times h. And now we fill in the values that they give us. They tell us the volume is 11,077.92 is going to be equal to 3.14 times radius squared, because they don't give us a value for the radius here, they just tell us it's r, times the height is 32. And we want to get r all by itself on one side of the equal sign. So first thing we got to do is divide both sides by 3.14. So if we take 11,077.92 divided by 3.14, that gives us 3,528 is going to be equal to r squared times 32. So we got to divide both sides by 32, still moving everything away from that r squared. So divide by 32, and that gives us 110.25 is equal to r squared. But we want to know just what the radius is, not what radius squared is. So to undo a square, you take the square root of both sides. So the square root of 110.25 is going to be 10.5 is our radius. And our units for this one are going to be feet. Looking at the next one, they give us a cone. So right off the top of my head, I'm going to say volume is going to be equal to 1/3 base times height, because of working with the cone, so that means the 1/3. So volume is going to be equal to 1/3 times the area of the base, still working with the circle, so pi r squared times the height. Plug in the values they give us. 7,362.5464 is going to be equal to 1/3 times 3.14 times r squared times 33. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to divide both sides by 1/3. And when I do that, I'm going to go 7,362.5464 divided by, and I'm going to put the 1/3 in parentheses. And if you don't, it's going to take this number divided by 1 and then divide it by 3. And that's not what we want to have happen. We want to have the number divided by 1/3. So that leaves us with 22,087.6392 is going to be equal to 3.14 times radius squared times 33. So divide both sides by 3.14. And that's going to leave us with 7,034.28 is going to be equal to r squared times 33. Divide both sides by 33. And that's going to give us 213.16 is equal to r squared. So to get r all by itself, we've got to take the square root of both sides. The square root undoes the square. So square root of 213.16 gives us 14.6. And our units are going to be inches. They could also give you a problem where they give you the volume and they ask you to solve for the height. So still using the same formulas as before. In this case, we're working with a cone, so that tells us we're going to have the 1/3. So volume is equal to 1/3 base times height. Volume, in this case, is going to be 8,478 is going to be equal to 1/3 times the area of the base. And in this case, our base is pi So 3.14 volume is going to be equal to 1/3 times pi r squared times height. So 1/3, 3.14 times our radius squared, so 18 squared times the height. So 8,478 is going to be equal to, I'm going to simplify all of this. So I'm going to do 1/3 times 3.14 times 18 squared. So all three of those numbers multiplied together is going to give us 339.12 times the height. We want to solve for the height, so divide both sides by 339.12. So 8,478 divided by 339.12, and that's going to give us 25 is equal to our height, and our units for this problem are meters. So there's how to find volume of both a cylinder and a cone. If you have any questions on it, write them down on the paper and ask when you get to class.